So I spent the last week at the South by Southwest Film Festival. That's why I haven't reviewed a film since Saturday. But I saw three films since then at the film festival. I had a giant list that I was hoping to get through, but I had to work. So it gets really tiring at film festivals, and I did a lot more sleeping than I had intended. So I only got to three films, but two of the three films I really liked. The third film, I'll explain. So the first one that I saw was actually it was my favorite, and I really hope it gets distribution. Only one of these three films currently has distribution. So I just really hope it gets picked up somewhere so I can tell you all to see it when it's available. This film was called Family, and it was written and directed by Laura Steinel. It stars Taylor Schilling as a woman, an office worker who, not an office worker, she's like a hedge fund manager in New Jersey, and her name is Kate, and she has no filter, and she has isolated all her would-be friends and coworkers because she's just not very good at sugarcoating things. She just says everything how she feels all the time, and it's generally not well received. She gets a call from her brother and her sister-in-law, played by Allison Tolman, asking if she can watch their daughter for the night. Her name is Maddie. She's played by Brynn Vale. While they check her sister-in-law's mom into hospice. Reluctantly, she agrees to do it for the one night. Eventually, it becomes an entire week. At which time, she sort of reluctantly but slowly, very much so, bonds with her niece, and also sort of discovers some real niceties about herself that she had sort of let disappear until her niece decides to run off and join the gathering of the Juggalos. I did not know what a Juggalo was. I had to look that up. That has to do with followers of a band called Insane Clown Posse. I do know that band. I don't know how I didn't know that their fandom had a whole name. But basically, the director said she had been watching documentaries on this subculture and while she was coming up with the rest of the story, and thought that would be a nice sort of mixture. And it really did work well together. There's some real weight to the ways in which the brother and sister characters interact based on their family dynamic growing up and being the children of an alcoholic. And for the most part, this is a very sweet film. It's zany and funny without ever being gross out. Every single character is likable. There's a great turn from Atlanta's Brian, wow, that's hard to say, Brian Tyree Henry as Maddie's karate teacher. And I just laughed so much watching this movie. It's the exact kind of movie I want more of, and it was on the exact level of comfort and comedy and sweetness and everything and cynicism, all of it, that I kind of want in a movie. So I feel like that kind of just family comedy, this is a good movie for you. I really hope it gets distribution because I want to see it again, and B, I want to tell people to go see it because it was just so fantastic. The next film I watched was Fast Color. It's directed by Julia Hart and co-written by Julia Hart and Jordan Horowitz, who produced it. He also produced La La Land, among other things. It stars Mbatha-Raw in a dystopic future where there's a giant drought. Within this drought, she also has magic powers or superpowers, whatever you want to call it. And she makes her way back to her mother, played by Lorraine Toussaint, and her daughter, played by Sonia Sidney. She was the little girl in both Fences and Hidden Figures a couple years ago. And it's a wonderful intergenerational film on top of being a really great sci-fi film. I think it lags a little in the middle, it could get a little tighter, but otherwise, I think the idea behind creating sci-fi that's completely um, driven from female life creation is fascinating. They said in a Q&A after the film that they had wanted to have these women have powers that came from creation rather than destruction, which was what they saw in a lot of male superhero, supernatural type movies. And I thought that was fascinating. There's some really beautiful visual effects in this. Obviously, the title "Fast Color" really comes into play towards the end of the film. You'll see what it means. And lastly, I just want to talk about Gugu Mbatha-Raw. She is up with Carey Mulligan as my favorite actresses. They should be in everything. I love Gugu so much. She's such a fierce, dynamic, amazing screen presence. She has so much range, and she has probably the most expressive eyes of any actress currently working. She can say so much with just her face. It's amazing. So I really loved this film. It does not have distribution yet either. I really hope it gets distribution soon because it's another one that I'd like to see again / tell everyone to watch. I just love a good sci-fi. If you've seen Advantageous, it would make a really great double feature with Jennifer Fang's Advantageous. I think they are really interesting, very women-centric, female-led, female-written films, sci-fi films, and if you're talking about the future being female, we should have futuristic films that come from the female experience, and this one definitely encapsulates that. The last film I watched was a documentary by Amy Adrion called Half the Picture, and it's a documentary about female filmmakers and the current EEOC investigation towards Hollywood and its discriminatory hiring practices of female directors. I think it could have done a little more to talk about female directors leading up to the last 10 years. It does a really good job of talking to a ton of great filmmakers who've been making films for the last 10, 20 years, but it doesn't do all that great of a job to establish the history of Hollywood and to talk about when it shifted, because there were tons of women working in the silent era, and when it shifted to being a very male-dominated industry really had to do with banking coming in, but that's not talked about in this film, and I thought that was a missed opportunity. I also don't know that it was well edited, and I think it was, I didn't like the way they framed most of the interviews, like literally framed most of the interviews. I don't like the way it was shot. That said, I loved the interviews. There are so many great interviews in this film. They interview everyone from Ava DuVernay to Jamie Babbitt to Gina Prince Bythewood to Martha Coolidge. Oh my God, the Martha Coolidge interviews were great. She's a badass. They interview Nisha Ganatra. They interview Maggie Greenwald, Catherine Hardwicke, Mary Herron, Karen Kusama. Karen Kusama had a lot to say. Cassie Lemons, Tina Mabry, Kimberly Pierce, Patricia Riggin had a very interesting things to say about being basically mistreated when she was hired to work on the 33, and the way in which she had to come kind of swoop in and fix things that shouldn't have been broken in the first place. Penelope Spheeris, as always, is fantastic. Jill Soloway, Sam Taylor Johnson, several other people. So, and they also interviewed, along with all these female directors, they interviewed people who have been following this in the last few years, like Melissa Silverstein and Rebecca Keegan. So I think it's a good film to instruct people who maybe don't already know the nuts and bolts of the case. I mean, I didn't learn very much because I've done a lot of reading and research, and I followed this for a very long time. But I did learn a lot about the individual cases of some of these women and the way that they were treated. I particularly enjoyed Karen Kusama talking about her inability to get hired as a television director when she was like, I've done a $1 million movie, a $20 million movie, and a $60 million movie. I can't do a television show. Fascinating. And there was a great interview with Nisha Ganatra, who made several feature films and then worked in television with Jill Soloway on Transparent. and she talked about how she was herself was not giving like female cinematographers a chance, but because their reels weren't very good. And then she realized their reels weren't very good because they didn't get the same budgets as the male cinematographers most of the time. And so, of course, the reels weren't as good. And until someone gives them the chance to work on a decent budget, they're not going to have good reels. And she realized that the same kind of discrimination that was happening to her was probably happening to all these other people below the line. And to that point, you get how Ava helps hire people below the line and staffed up Queen Sugar. There was a great conversation with Brenda Chapman about her getting taken off of Brave. So there's just a lot of really great stories in here from these women. And thankfully, I think we really are seeing a lot of change. The other thing I think it kind of missed is, and this is just something I will continually saying, there are a lot of women making films. They're not making them at the same numbers, and they're not making them at the same budget points, but there are so many women making films every week. There's 2 to 3 that are released on VOD. Like, there's no way that any individual who wants to and can afford $6 a week can pretty much see a film directed by a woman and give them your money. You just have to seek it out and find it. And that's something that we can do, even though we're not running a movie studio and we're not, an agent. We can seek out every week films directed by women and give them our money. And that's all I have to say. Like, there, if you need someone to help you find those films, I can help you find them on Twitter. There's a great Twitter called women_direct. She's always telling people what films are opening. There is a way to be part of this change, and you just need to fork up the money. So these are the films I watched at South by Southwest. If you want to know more about what I thought about any of them, find me on Twitter. I'm always there, tweeting angry thoughts.